right, daily question for you.
Yeah.
What's something that you've referenced, but very few people have gotten your reference?
I have a perfect example of this. I don't remember what the reference was, but it was to pairing with your dinosaur ride or something. And it's this super obscure reference to a show called Dinotopia that had 17 episodes, I think, and like so few people know of it. And I made that reference at, I want to say like D&D or something. And I didn't realize how obscure that show was until I had made that reference. And Adam Smith was the only other person in the room that actually understood what I was getting at. And he was like, wow, that is an obscure reference. And I was like, but you got it. And so now it's sort of a running joke in that crew of the Dinotopia reference. Because I don't know, all my siblings had watched it because we watched it together.
They knew what you were talking about.
And I guess I'd never brought it up to anyone else before. So that's mine.
I'm trying to think of a specific one. I feel like it's pretty frequent that I'll use a reference that nobody understands. And it just kind of depends on the group that I'm in.
Yeah.
But there's one from like the first one that comes to mind is The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I don't know, my friends and I just thought it was really funny. And so we would reference it a lot. But there's a guy in that movie, and this is the only part that I remember of that movie, where he's like in the stocks. And then he gets free. And he's like, I'm free. I'm free.
Yep.
Dang it. And like falls back into the stocks or gets stuck somewhere again where he's like trapped. And so we would reference that a lot. And not a lot of people knew that was where that came from.
Huh. That's super interesting. There's a couple that have been shocking me lately with my clients. They'll like be going through a situation. You're going to get the reference immediately. Them and their partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, are on a break and somebody makes out with somebody else and they're talking to me about this. And I say, you were on a break. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh no.
That's like cringy that they don't get it.
Yeah.
Like, how dare they, uncultured swine?
We probably just need to clip more Friends episodes into TikToks.
Yeah.
And then we can get the younger audiences to be more cultured with the classics.
I have found a lot of joy in like the youth group leaders that I serve with.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them get my references or they offer references. And I'm like,
yeah.
You know, it's like that Vine where it's like, I do that.
We'll see how many people get that reference. It sort of segues into the intent of this episode, which is if we got to control probably like the people around us or anybody that came into our friend circles, their education in certain categories. What are the books that people who know us should read? What are the TV shows that they should watch? What are the movies? Things like that, that we feel are part of our lives, our worldview, kind of like these are going to come up. These are influential in how we interact with the world.
And I would say that you probably don't have to be really well versed in whatever we offer.
Sure.
Because like a lot of the things that you're going to say, I was just thinking about this. A lot of the things you're going to say, I've never read.
Sure.
I don't participate in.
Yeah.
But I know enough about it that I can have conversations about it. And that's the big thing. Or I know enough that I can ask good questions. And so, you know, we're just trying to help you guys be our friends.
Yeah.
That's the whole point, you know. And
I feel like knowing us long enough, you hear references to these things enough. And so we're just calling them all out.
Exactly.
And I think I'm gonna break our pattern for episodes real hard here.
Okay.
Because I think that this is an excellent dinner conversation. Because you just think about like, what are a couple things that you wish some of the people in your friend group actually knew about or had experience with that would either make you feel really loved or seen or just make conversation go smoother. Because I think that's how I sort of approach some of these of, you know, the first one for me is The Office.
Yeah.
I watch it all the time. It's my white noise, right? And I think there's some people in my life that have never watched The Office, and I still make references to it, but they don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're either going to hear me explain the episode verbatim, line for line, or you're going to give me a shrug like you don't care. And I'm going to be deeply offended by that because you don't care about one of the greatest TV shows ever that also contains the greatest movie ever, which is Threat Level Midnight, the best movie ever made.
I don't understand people that can't get through The Office.
Peter Jordahl is one of them. I remember when he was living in Washington and I flew up to see him. I don't remember why I was able to convince him to do it, but he watched one episode with me and it was the sexual harassment episode. And so it's where Michael Scott kisses
Toby.
No, not
No,
Toby.
not Toby.
Michael
Why
Scott
would
would
he
never kiss Toby.
Who does he kiss? Oscar.
Oscar. He kisses Oscar, and Peter was like curled up. I could see him shrinking into himself with just cringe the entire time. And I get it. Like it definitely is not for everybody, but I feel like you need to have some context of The Office.
It's for the best people.
Yes.
Like in addition to The Office, I think for both of us, I mean, Office definitely ranks the highest, but I would say Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
And Parks and Rec. Like you've got to be, and Friends. Now that you mentioned that, I didn't originally have that on my list, but
see, I feel like Friends is still like a broader cultural thing. It shouldn't just be us. It baffles me
but
that
they
some of those
should
references.
get it.
Yeah, they should get it.
I mean, I was literally helping somebody move the other day, and you know what they said walking up the stairs?
Pivot.
Exactly. Because that's the appropriate thing to do.
That's the appropriate response.
100%.
Yeah.
If we ever move, like when we're in our, I don't know, 70s into a new house, I better still hear pivot. I better hear it.
Yeah. Okay. So I made a joke the other night that I think is actually true, and I might get some hate for this. I said, majority of my understanding or knowledge about the military comes from two sources. It comes from the clients that I work with who are in the military.
Okay.
Where they're telling something, I might ask them something or look it up later on. But primarily, I think it comes from this show, Stargate SG-1. I remember Hannah and I just binged that show all the time as kids. And looking back on it now, it really is not the best representation of military. There's so many breaches of protocol and ridiculous stuff. But I don't know. That's where a lot of my understanding of the military comes from. And I think the reason that I would put it on my list of classical Trever education is there are so many elements of good sci-fi in that show where they're not even necessarily tropes, those are in the show, but they have really good plot lines that you'll find in other sci-fi shows, and they do them really well and carry them over into other episodes, so it's more expansive, and they go into more of the science side of the sci-fi in a way that some other shows don't necessarily do. Yeah. Like, I love Star Trek, but not often are they using actual science. And now, granted, SG-1 doesn't stick purely to the science. There's some crazy stuff in there, but they're explaining the concept of multiple dimensions as if you've never heard about it before. And going back and rewatching it, I'm realizing like, wow, it really feels weird that they're explaining it in such depth, because doesn't everybody know about that now? Yeah. And I think some of that is having watched SG-1 and being introduced to so many of those different concepts in sci-fi.
What I was thinking of when you were talking about that, I was laughing because for two reasons. Number one, I thought you were telling people that they need to have some understanding of the military to talk to you. And I was like, what?
Nope, not that one.
And then my first thought was, what's my understanding of the military? And this is a joke. Okay, I promise. I was like, Cadet Kelly.
Oh, no. So together we are very well versed.
So good. Military.
Pretty much military brats. You are a military brat.
Yeah, kind of.
You barely qualify. There's a lot of elements of your childhood where you barely qualify for things.
Yes. We should do a whole episode of barely qualifying.
I love that.
That'd
idea.
be a good one. Yeah. No, my dad retired when I was like 3.
Yeah.
So I don't know anything.
Barely qualify.
Yeah. I was trying, like, as we were going through this, I was trying to think of categories.
Yeah.
So we've primarily been talking about things that we've seen. So I want to stick in that category for a little bit, but then I have some other categories I have
some others too. Yeah.
Okay. So some other like things that I want people to have watched.
Okay.
In order to get on my level.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Exactly. Yep. Vines. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Like you have to have a solid education of Vines. Just like watch the compilations on YouTube.
Yep.
You have to be able to quote them. You have to be able to pull them up at appropriate times of like when you go to a construction site and you see a sign that says road work ahead.
I sure hope it does.
Exactly. So you need to be able to do those. We already said the shows that we watch, a couple of them. I would also add, and okay, to be fair, it took me a while to get on board, but I am on board now.
Okay.
Great British Baking Show.
Heck yeah.
And Great Pottery Throwdown. And you have to be willing to eat some good snacks.
Yep.
And drink tea while we.
Can you imagine if we got to do that with like another couple or some friends? Like,
oh my gosh, that'd be amazing.
Getting pastries and tea and watching Pottery Throwdown.
That'd be so fun. It'd be like when people have like bachelorette watching parties.
Heck yeah.
We need friends like that.
Let's do that.
Anybody out there?
We're taking applications.
You want to have a tea party with us? You want to have some good, appetizers and some scones? Hit us up.
Let's do it.
And then my last one in this category that I think is important for people to have seen and to love, you better not critique it.
Oh.
Is my favorite movie, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers.
See that one, I can't think of who, but I know there's some people who have other opinions about that.
Yeah, for example, there was the theater guy that I worked with at my school.
Yeah.
He was like wanting to do musicals, and I was like, why don't you do Seven Brides or Seven Brothers? Like, it's my favorite. And he's like, that's such a stupid musical. And I was like, I hate you.
This might tie into another episode that we do later on in this season, because we definitely do seasons. I wonder if it's because it's a cozy musical. Because if you think about it.
Yeah, but there's such good dancing.
But no, I agree. I think it's phenomenal.
The music.
But I think that if you look at how you and I both view Sound of Music, like if you ended the movie before the interlude. Yeah. It would be such a wonderful movie.
It's such a good movie.
It's so good. But
you don't need the second half.
But I think then it falls under the category of cozy because there's not this huge, dangerous conflict. There's not this major risk. Like in Seven Brides and Seven Brothers, you have the avalanche chase scene and then a tense moment when they're coming to the farm. But that's really it. Like the rest of it's pretty cozy. And I wonder if that's why some people don't like it.
I mean, there is conflict between the main husband and the main wife.
Absolutely agree, but it's not the normal dramatic, theatrical. Like
that's another one to have tea and snacks
totally. We're gonna do an episode later on about cozy. I'm sure Seven Brides for Seven Brothers is gonna come up.
A cozy episode. We're gonna have to listen to this episode ourselves just to write down all the ideas that we have. Okay, do you have any other in the watch category?
I do. I think Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson, the original trilogy. It's just
which is so funny because I have yet to finish it.
You've tried a couple times, but
I just need to try on my own at 7 a.m. I cannot watch it at night.
I think it's phenomenal cinematically. I think the color grading is phenomenal as well. The look of it, the costuming, there's so much detail in it. They did a really good job of using practical effects instead of CGI. And the CGI that is used in such a way and given so much time and expertise to be implemented that 25 years later, it still looks really good. And I think that those are some of the things that I personally look for in movies and cinema is if you're doing an adaptation, there really is not a better example than Lord of the Rings of how to do that. I think the cinematic shots and the director of photography, like when the director of photography is doing his job really well, that makes me happy in a movie. And so there's just so many elements of the production of Lord of the Rings that I really like. And I think also the hipster in me kind of likes that there's a big barrier for entry. You have to be committed to be able to say you've watched all 3 extended editions. And I love that. I think
I'm really grateful that wasn't on your list of my future wife needs to have this.
Yeah, I would have thrown that list out when I met you, though. Okay. I would have realized that's stupid. I'd rather this girl than any other girl.
Than your list.
Yeah. I would also say that Lord of the Rings is one of those for me that is a book thing too. Like if we move into the category of books, I really like the archaic language in the Lord of the Rings. But I think one of the things that makes it like classical education in my book is I think there are few books that will cause you to view the world around you differently the way that Lord of the Rings will. Because Tolkien was known to like take walks and stop for 30 minutes to stare at a tree. And you can tell that by reading the books because he is describing the scenery, he's describing the weather, he's describing the landscapes, and doing it in such detail that anytime you go out in the woods on a hike, if you have the context of having read The Lord of the Rings, I think it changes the way that you hear the crackling of the leaves under your feet or the wind blowing through the branches.
Maybe I'll have more success if I like listen to the books.
Oh yeah, you could. I would even be okay with that being your going to sleep book. Although you'd probably get lost in the plot. Because it's a little bit complex.
I'm really good at falling asleep to books that I listen to and remembering nothing. Hence Phantom Tollbooth that I have yet to make it through that you read to me.
Stinking doldrums. Do you have any books in this category?
Well, I more so authors or genres.
Sure.
So for me, Francine Rivers, you have to have like I would encourage you. What's so cool is my grandma called me the other day because I had just purchased for her my favorite book of Francine Rivers, which is called The Lady's Mine. And I bought that for her because I had a conversation with her of like, hey, what are you reading? And it was just a sweet conversation. And she called me and she was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't put it down.
Wow.
I read it in a day. And I was like,
dang.
Amazing. She has written so much. You should read everything of hers.
That's super cool.
Whatever. Should read all of her books starting with like Redeeming Love and up. And yeah, that was just really encouraging that she jumped onto that bandwagon. But other than that, I was going to say just like romance novels, like jumping into all of the different tropes that you were mentioning earlier, but for rom-coms. I have been doing a lot more and I wish I had friends that would read some of the same authors that I'm reading because I've stepped away from the spicier books just because I feel better about it. So there's like some Christian fiction authors or some like closed door romance books that I've really been jumping into. But Becky Wade is one of my favorite authors. I've read all of her books. I don't think there's one that I haven't read.
Wow.
And then Sarah Adams is pretty closed door. I'm trying to think. Shoot. I don't know. Some of them are like really new authors to me, so I don't remember who they are because I've read like one or two of theirs, but I really enjoyed them because it's just a sweet, like cozy in a way. Like that's what I like about the closed door romance is that it just feels cozy and it just feels like you might get a kiss and that's it.
Yeah.
And I'm happy there.
I'll have to read at least one and get some like boyfriend advice.
Yeah, I would.
What an emphatic.
No. That's because I had just recently read a book called The Boyfriend's Book Club.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Where a guy was getting romance advice from reading romance books. That one was spicy a little bit. So slightly I wouldn't read that one.
Caliente.
I don't know what the pepper rating is, but it's probably 3 or 4 out of 5.
Okay. I have 3 more books. I'm combining 2 of them under the same concept. But before we get to those, one of the ones that is actually classic literature for me that I think is really important
is Wuthering Heights.
Actually, you're close. I would say Jane Eyre.
Oh.
Because as I was reflecting on it, there's several of those books that are in my mind, like the 1800s Victorian women and Brontes and Shelley. They're phenomenal, right? Austen. But something about Jane Eyre really speaks to me because it if you look at the context of the time, a lot of men and even a lot of women didn't have high expectations of women's internal worlds and ability to make their own judgments and decisions. And then comes along Charlotte Bronte, who publishes the book under a ghost name as a man, and then has the main protagonist be a woman. And throughout her childhood, she's seen as like the obstinate girl that the society is supposed to beat down into submission, but you're seeing it from her perspective and she just won't be beat down. And you move into her adult life and she's making decisions that are different than what would have been expected. But I just love the internal voice because it sounds so normal. It feels very human. I think Jane Eyre has a lot of really strong values and shows strong character. But I think Jane Eyre is like a foundational piece for me in my feminism of having somebody to look up to admire. And I read it again recently, like a year or two ago, and had the thought of like, man, I'd be really thrilled if our daughter grew up to be similar to Jane Eyre. And there aren't many people in books that I would say that about. So Jane Eyre is a good one. If you haven't read it, you should definitely read it.
And then your last one?
My last one is two books that have fundamentally changed the way that I see relationships. 5 Love Languages. I remember reading that when I was maybe beginning of middle school, end of elementary. I was pretty early that I read it. But it just changed the way that I saw people and how to have relationship with them. And I think it's really a powerful tool. The other one is The Relationship Cure by the Gottmans, because I think that they explain some of the communication in healthy relationship really well and effectively and give you tools on how to have more intentional, meaningful conversations and request needs and make space for that. And so I think those are the two that have really shaped how I view relationships.
I'm shocked that you wouldn't have as a classical education of Trever.
Yeah.
Brandon Sanderson.
See, sometimes I actually get annoyed talking Cosmere with people. Because
interesting.
I don't know. I don't know why. It feels conspiracy theorist and not a fun way sometimes. And so I actually prefer to just be an observer there.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought about including like
Fair.
Phantom of the Opera, Wuthering Heights, some of those. Edgar Allan Poe.
Yep. Okay. I don't, maybe recreation.
Oh, okay.
Is my category. So I think people should be willing and fairly capable / good at lawn games.
Agreed.
Board games.
Agreed. That was on my list.
I specifically wrote play sports, not watch sports. Like for us, like it's more about like, let's go out and play volleyball. I don't really want to watch volleyball.
Yeah.
Or let's go play basketball. I do not want to watch basketball on the TV. And then the other thing that I was going to say in this category of recreation is that you will win me over if you can do like water things with me, like paddle boarding, or if you have a boat. We need some friends with boats. I love wakeboarding. I love water skiing. I love tubing. Not really. That's a little bit dangerous in my book. But just being on a lake all day, being in water. I'm not a huge fan of chlorine, so put me in a lake, or ocean's okay too. I don't love salt water either. I guess I'm really just a lake girl.
Yeah, you
are. Or like fresh water. But yeah, just I love water. So yeah. That's my happy place.
The idea of just being willing to go out and do fun things.
Yeah.
Having something
Come hiking.
to do. Like, because, I mean, we are getting older and we're getting into that phase where sometimes our hangouts are, let's sit around the table and just talk for 2 hours.
It's true.
And I don't know. Maybe when I'm 60, I won't have so many judgments for myself when I do that. But you throw in a board game, suddenly it's totally appropriate.
Well, we even recently just went and played pickleball with basically another couple. I mean, we were there with a whole group of people, but we really only played with that one couple. And that was a lot of fun. I thought that was a great date. And we just love doing things together. I mean, we love conversing with each other, of course, but I almost prefer like, let's do an activity together and then talk to each other while we eat.
Yeah. Let the conversing almost be secondary.
Yeah.
But have an intentional objective that we're trying to do. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Do you have any other recreational? Oh, I have. I mean, I feel like I know your list.
Oh, really? Because I did not have many in this category.
Well, I mean, you had board games.
I did have board games, but the only other one that I had
is D&D.
Well, D&D was on there. And I think that that's mostly just, I think it's meaningful to have played at least one or two TTRPG sessions of something, because it teaches you some social skills. It really puts, like, I was thinking about one of the reasons that I really love it and I would encourage it for our kids. There's the social element, which is really well studied. It's great for kids with autism to be able to develop some of the skills that aren't naturally developed. It's just really good there. But then also, there have been so many times where we're playing D&D and we're doing theoretical math of, okay, so we know what the hardness of this stone door is. We know how many, what percentage likelihood we have to be able to hit the door, the average damage that we deal to the door each hit, how long it takes to hit, how many hours do we have to have our characters stand here punching the door in order to, and so we're like practically doing math and word problems. And I think that it, if done well, can cause you to think through use of equipment. Like, how can you use a rope to solve this problem? Or what ways can you laterally think through problems? And the risk is so low.
One, I think too, like, I don't think, you know, with the whole idea of this episode, it's not like we want one person to adapt every single thing, but more so of like why I would put a few more things in your recreation category is because you are so passionate about a handful of topics that if you have somebody that you can talk to about them, you really value that. So I would add photography or videography to that, because I think you really enjoy talking about that, or even just like painting minis or I'm trying to think just any other role-playing games that aren't D&D. And then for me, I was just thinking, I was like, oh, it'd be cool if I knew somebody else that like really enjoyed doing their nails or stuff like that. So I don't know. It's like I don't need somebody to come in with every single one of these, but it'd be cool to be like, oh, actually, Brie, I do love that. We should talk about it.
Yeah, they're kind of like connecting points. Yeah. Things that...
If you want to connect with us, talk to us about these things.
Well, and I think it's been fun in my relationship with Adam Smith. I've known him for
a long time,
over 10 years. And there's a lot of things that we already had in common with each other, and then a lot of things that we've done together. And so in some ways we think similarly, but it's been fun to be able to look into that relationship and notice the things that bind us together more and more, and how they're sometimes really little things, right? Like, you used to ref YMCA and I used to ref YMCA, and how this situation that we're in plays into those memories, and I feel closer to you and more of an alliance with you because of that common thing. Yeah. All right. So I was thinking through this, if I like was putting my kids through a school of Trevor's classical education. And we actually had a conversation about this the other night. I think I would probably include a robust course on church history and denominational differences within the church, because I think that has been something very impactful for me. I had to take church history when I was in high school because I went to a private Christian school, and I learned a lot, and there's a lot of context and things that I forgot for sure. Right. But they come up later. I'm like, oh, that sounds familiar. I think I know what that's about. And I'm able to like pursue the knowledge or have some context for it. Yeah. But then also, I think it was probably when I was at Moody Bible Institute, they asked us to take a couple Sundays and to go to churches we normally wouldn't go to. And that was a really fun experience because I got to see like, why do I like the church that I like? Why do I pursue the specific denomination that I'm pursuing? What is the thing that's drawing me in? And really to contemplate that. And also I think it disillusioned the idea that, you know, if I have somebody who I'm connecting with and they say they're Southern Baptist, well, obviously your theology is so like it really got rid of that for me because then I'm being asked to go to these places and recognizing like it's not bad. They're not like, what's going to happen? I'm going to learn something, and I can learn, I can explore, I can view these things. And so I think that would be something that I would encourage, because I think it's also interesting to be able to talk about the different denominations, or to be able to see how the church has developed and why we are where we are now, and what we want to do to impact it differently, or to create change, or to even just go back to places of greater health in the past.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because that's actually my category.
Oh, is it?
It's essentially just faith.
Yeah.
Of like, I want people to love Jesus and, you know, go to church, be in small groups, encourage me in my faith, and then like be able to have deep theological conversations. Because I think something that I just really value is when you get into like, I don't know, what did you guys have a conversation on? It was like the most beautiful angel, like which one's the most beautiful or something. It
was a little bit more crude than that. It was basically like, who would be the hottest of the archangels?
Okay. Yeah. But you like have to know scripture in order to have that conversation. And so I think that's like a level at which I want people to be, because even it's just funny, like I need you to know the basics, of course, but then I want to be able to reference like the shortest verse in the Bible. It's Jesus wept. Like I need you to know that, because I feel like I'm like mood all the time. Like Jesus wept me. But I don't know. There's just like some funny things in the Bible that if you don't know, you're not going to get my reference. So like bringing it all the way back to the beginning, like I need you to know it so that I can reference it.
Totally. Yeah.
Because the problem is I actually don't know where most of my scripture knowledge is in the Bible. I just know that it's there. I'm like, well, there's a verse somewhere that says this.
Let me Google it. I'll find it.
Yeah. Every single time. You know what? The Lord doesn't look down on that.
Yeah.
Because originally, you know what? The Bible didn't have chapters and verse numbers.
Or written.
Yeah. It was all spoken. And then it was on a scroll. And then they did that. So I'm just saying. I'm still blessed and highly favored.
I feel like Awana was really good for me in that.
Yeah.
Having to memorize verses and all of that. So, yeah.
I only have one more thing.
I don't think I have any others. I'm pretty easy to connect with, really. That look.
Okay, the last thing I would add, and I mean, it's not like you have to do this, but I think it'd be cool, is to abide by our ideals of like, the more closely that you can accept them, the better it's going to be to hang around us. So like, I mean, we have a whole episode on it. You can go back and listen to it. But even just the, like, if you can accept no as an answer, you should ask every question. Like, I want to receive that too, of like, ask every question and I'm going to say no to you. And you have to be willing to accept that. And it's also like, I want you to ask questions.
Yeah.
And then like loser sets the tone. Like I want to play games with people who can be good losers and not grumpy butts. And just, I mean, again, I'm not going to go through all of our ideals, but I just think like, I want you to be aware of them so that when I use them, I was about to say, when I use them against you.
Weaponized ideals.
But no, because I was like, you know, one of ours is Sharon's don't believe lies. So I want to be able to call out a lie that I'm hearing you say and say like, no, don't believe that. That's not true about you. But I need you to know my ideal. I mean, it's just helpful.
Because then it becomes sort of shorthand. You understand the context with which I'm saying that to you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And the work that we've gone through to establish that. Like you and I used to be so competitive, and I would label myself as a sore loser. And I think
used to be.
Yeah. And in our aging and like just
our wisdom.
In our wisdom. Yeah. We've really improved. And now I just enjoy playing. Like, I don't care if I win or lose. I would rather volley forever than to constantly spike the ball and score points.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I think I'm going to revise my break of our structure already. Because I actually have another not daily question, but dinner table conversation. Because I think as I'm reflecting on some of the relationships that I have with people who are close to me, sometimes it's really fun to be able to highlight the things that are in common, or the interests, or the things that we share that maybe most people don't, right? Like, Jane Eyre is a good example. I don't know why I'm still on a Jane Eyre kick, like a year after rereading it. But there's been a couple people that I'll talk to about Jane Eyre.
Yeah.
And there's something that sparks in them. And then there's this moment of connection.
Yeah.
And I don't think I could have that with everybody, because I don't think everybody's read Jane Eyre.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones who have, there's something that sparks between us. And so to even just look at the relationships with the people that you're at dinner with or at the table with, and to reflect on what are the things that spark between the two of you, or however many it is, that don't necessarily spark for other people.
Yeah.
Because I think that's
cool.
That feels very forming of relationship.
I do think it is pretty funny, though, that in our conversation, I have accommodated like 50% of the things that you said.
Yeah.
But that's why we need friends.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you are my best friend, and we need friends outside of each other to meet those needs and to have stuff in common with. Like, we're not enough for each other.
Yeah.
And that's true of any marriage.
Were just saving that for like year 30 of marriage, when we get bored of each other.
Yeah.
That you're just going to go into those things and
that's a good idea.
Respark
I should.
Marriage.
Yeah. I'll listen to this episode in like 10 years and be like, okay, what do I need to do to love Trever in a new way? Okay. I will finally watch Lord of the Rings.
Watch all 15 hours.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that's why we need friendships, and God made us for community, and like, we can't rely only on each other, because I'm literally
you can't be my village.
fulfilling 50% of what you just requested. So I just think that's funny. But what I do share with you and the things that spark between us, I love talking to you about, and I love doing with you.
Same.